Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Today's movie is the 1956 snooze fest, The Indestructable Man, directed by Jack Palexfin. Indestructible Man concerns Charles the Butcher Benton, a robber and murderer condemned to death when his former colleagues turned state's evidence against him. Even though he's on death row, he not only swears vengeance on his former gang, but refuses to tell them where he hid the $600,000 from their last heist. All they know is that the money is hidden somewhere in the Los Angeles sewer system, probably with a copy of the screenplay for this movie floating next to it. The butcher rides the lightning right on schedule, and his body is delivered to a medical researcher trying to find a cure for cancer. How a dead man without cancer is going to further the experiment is beyond me, but there it is. Preparation of the body includes shooting a few thousand volts through it, and somehow this not only revives the dead butcher, but also fuses his cells into a single mass, making him impervious to damage. It's kind of like his skin is made of Kevlar. Now correct me if I'm wrong here, but what Kevlar does is prevent a bullet from penetrating. It still gives enough to cause internal damage, so the butcher should at the very least be aware that a bullet has hit him, since the impact could conceivably shatter a bone. Of course, I'm looking for logic in a movie that supposes someone killed by electrocution can be revived by electrocution, but much like the director of this movie, I'm looking to pad this out as much as possible, so you'll forgive my questioning. Once the butcher is mobile, it turns out that the electricity has fried his vocal cords so he can't speak. I'll explain the reason for this plot device in a minute. The butcher immediately lives up to his nickname and continues to do so throughout the movie, although in the scene where he hijacks the car of the sideshow barker, it looks as if all he does is give the guy a kick in the butt. Regular viewers know that my credo when it comes to film is the only truly bad movie is a dull movie. And today we have a truly bad movie. This movie is so bad, in fact, that I wasn't able to dig up even one tiny bit of trivia to turn into one of my usual "before I go on, let me tell you a bit about" segments. So if you'll forgive me, this time around my segment will be about style instead of substance. There are a lot of little tricks movie makers pull in order to make their films appear to have more substance budget-wise than they actually do. The most popular trick is the use of stock footage. Stock footage is exactly what it sounds like. Footage of various things, places, and events that are shot and sold to illustrate portions of movies, such as action shots of battles, establishing shots of locations, and the like. Let's say, for example, the climax of the movie takes place at a sporting event like a football game. In order to build tension, the filmmaker will cut quickly between the action on the field, the people cheering in the stands, and the hero trying to defuse a bomber in the stadium or something. If the film has a low budget, the director can't afford to stage and shoot a football game, so he'll raid the studio's stock footage library for the shots he needs to construct the scene. The only thing he'll actually shoot is the footage featuring the hero, which he'll then intercut with the stock footage of the game. In some movies, such as this one for example, stock footage doesn't do much to increase the tension, but it does pad the time of the movie out to second bill length, which was generally anything over 60 minutes. Lon Chaney Jr. was born Creighton Tull Chaney on February 6, 1906 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He appeared in 171 films and 36 television shows during his career. He appeared in walk-on and secondary roles until he came into his own when he appeared as Lenny in 1939's Of Mice and Men. If you're a fan of the Warner Brothers cartoons, you'll recognize quite a few quotes from that movie popping up in many of them. The most recognizable probably being, "Which way did he go, George? Which way did he go?" All of those references owe their existence to the performance of Lon as Lenny. Later in his career, he was accused of being a limited actor because of his seeming reliance on the Lenny character. But he said, "I get all of these dumb guy roles and I try to play them differently, but the directors are never happy until I give them Lenny." Because of his appearances in the Universal horror films of the 40s, most notably The Wolfman, he was typecast for most of his career as a horror star and rarely got to display much range. His nearly silent role in The Indestructable Man is attributed to a drinking problem that he had later in life. Several sources claim he couldn't remember the lines, but once you get a taste of the dialogue in this movie, you can't really blame him for keeping quiet. He died on July 12, 1973 in San Clemente, California. Max Showalter, who plays Lieutenant Richard Chasen, Appeared in 44 movies over the course of his career, starting with 1949's Always Leave Them Laughing. His screen name shifted between Max Showalter and Casey Adams for a good number of years. He also made 36 television appearances, usually as secondary characters. His last film appearance was as Grandpa Fred in 1984's 16 Candles. He died on July 30th, 2000, in Middletown, Connecticut. Sharp-eyed viewers will recognize Joe Flynn, who played Captain Binghamton on McHale's Navy, as the assistant of the scientist that brings the Butcher back to life. So right now, sit back, relax, and brush up on your stock footage spotting as you watch The Indestructible Man, right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.